most of you are going to skip the best anime of 2026 because the premise sounds like a fever dream. We're currently drowning in 40 new spring releases. Most of them are forgettable, generic, or just plain lazy. But if you look closer, there's a pulse, a legendary assassin learning to date, a psychological death game that actually respects your intelligence, and a fantasy world so beautifully illustrated it shouldn't even be possible to animate. I've dug through the entire spring 2026 lineup to find the few titles that actually justify your time. Which of these 7 is actually going to break the internet this season? Let's dive in. Starting with the poison. Every anime season has at least one premise that sounds completely ridiculous, until you realize it actually might be a masterpiece. Marriage Toxin follows Gero, the ultimate heir to a legendary poison clan. He spent his entire life learning how to eliminate targets with surgical precision, but he has absolutely no idea how to talk to women. The stakes? If Gero doesn't find a wife and continue the bloodline immediately, his family will force his sister into an arranged marriage to do it for him. To save her, Gero teams up with a professional marriage swindler to treat dating like a high-stakes assassination mission. It's a bizarre cocktail of chaotic action and genuine rom-com energy where dating advice and poison combat share the same screen time. It's weird, it's vibrant, and in the hands of Studio Bones, it's probably going to be the most visually stimulating show of the year. Which is exactly why I'm curious to see Marriage Toxin animated. But if you want a different kind of lethal legacy, we have to talk about the old guard. The creator of Fullmetal Alchemist is finally back with a story that feels like the dark, spiritual successor we've been craving, Demons of the Shadow Realm. This is the first major series from Hiromu Arakawa since Fullmetal Alchemist ended, and you can feel that DNA immediately. It follows twins, Yuru and Asa, living in a secluded village that feels like it's stuck in the past, until the modern world literally breaks down their front door with heavy machinery and automatic weapons. What makes this stand out isn't just the old world versus the new world clash, but the demons themselves. They're supernatural pairs with highly specific, often brutal rules. It has that classic Arakawa balance, character-driven humor that can turn into a cold, existential threat in a single panel. It's the kind of shonen that doesn't feel like it's talking down to you, and for a lot of people, that's going to be the big show of the season. But while Arakawa is a master of lived-in world, there's another series this season that's approaching world building from a completely different perspective. One that treats magic less like a weapon and more like fine art. This leads us to Witch Hat Atelier. If you spent any time in a bookstore over the last few years, you've probably seen these covers. They look less like manga and more like 19th century storybooks. The story follows Coco, a girl born without magic in a world where magic is a closely guarded secret. But the hook here isn't a chosen one power trip. It's the realization that magic in this world is an art form, literally. It's drawn with specific ink and intricate runes. If you can draw it, you can cast it. It's a series built on the wonders of discovery, but it's underpinned by a much darker, more complex political world. With Bug Films handling the production, the big question is whether they can translate the legendary line work into motion. If they pull it off, this isn't just a seasonal highlight. This could end up being one of the most beautiful fantasy animes we've seen in years. Switching gears entirely, we have to talk about Liar Game. If you've ever felt like modern anime is missing that suffocating, high-stakes psychological tension, the kind that we used to get from shows like Death Note or Kaiji, this is your answer. There's a very specific kind of tension that only happens when you realize you're watching someone much smarter than you play a game that you don't fully understand. That's Liar Game. The setup is cold. The Liar Game Corporation hands you a suitcase with a 100 million yen loan. Your only job is to keep it, while everyone else in the game tries to steal it from you. If you lose, you don't just out. You're left with a life-ruining debt. What makes this essential is the contrast between our leads. You have Nao, who's almost dangerously honest, and Akiyama, a genius who understands human greed better than anyone. Watching them navigate these social experiments is fascinating. It's dense, it's stressful. It's the kind of show that makes you feel like your brain's actually expanding while you're watching it. Madhouse is back in their element here, and I cannot wait for a weekly dose of anxiety that this is going to provide. But if the psychological weight of Liar Game feels a bit too heavy, Spring 2026 has a much weirder, much louder solution for you. Let's talk about the Hitman who has to go back to middle school. If you're a fan of Sakamoto days, you need to be watching Kill Blue. We've seen the legendary Hitman trope a dozen times, but this one adds a layer of genuine comedy that actually lands. Ogami is a top-tier assassin, the kind of guy who can end a fight before it starts. But after being stung by a genetically modified wasp, he reverts back into the body of a middle schooler. The catch? To get the antidote, he has to navigate the one thing more terrifying than a professional hit: middle school. What I love about this is how Ogami tries to apply assassin logic to everyday school problems. Whether it's a sports festival or just trying to make friends, he treats every mundane task like it's covert op. It's got that high-speed action you'd expect from a shonen jump hit, but the heart of the show is watching a man who's seen it all try to figure out how to be a kid for the first time. But while we're on the subject of long-term careers, we have to talk about the literal legend of the industry. Because Rumiko Takahashi is back, and she's brought us something that feels like the dark supernatural sister to Inuyasha. Here we have Mao. If you've been watching anime for a while, you know the name Rumiko Takahashi. She's the architect behind Inuyasha and Ranma 1/2. And seeing her return to supernatural mystery in 2026 feels like a homecoming. Set in the Taisho era, it follows a girl who accidentally crosses over into the world of monsters and meets Mao, a powerful exorcist who's cursed with immortality. It has that classic Takahashi slow burn mystery, but it feels significantly darker and more jagged than her previous works. It's a story about a 900-year-old grudge, and it's the perfect pick for anyone who misses that gritty, occult atmosphere of the 90s supernatural shonen. And finally, we have my wildcard pick for the season, Awajima Hyakkei. If you're feeling burnt out by all the poison, assassins, and death games, this one's your palate cleanser. It's a series of stories centered around a specialized music and opera school. But don't let the school setting fool you. This is a quiet, atmospheric look at the pressure of being elite. It captures that very specific, bittersweet feeling of working towards a dream that you know might be fleeting. It's the kind of show that feels like a soft, rainy afternoon, heartbreakingly human, incredibly delicate, and a reminder that sometimes the most compelling stakes aren't life and death, but just whether or not you're good enough to stand on stage. It's not going to be the biggest hit of the season, but for the people who find it, it might end up being the one they remember the most. Spring 2026 is looking like the first season in a long time where the weird stuff is finally getting the budget it deserves. I'm going to be tracking all 7 of these shows as they air to see which ones stick the landing and which ones fall apart by episode 6. If you want to know what's actually worth finishing this season, stick around. I'll be doing a deep dive into the mid-season report when the time comes, but for now, I'm going to go prepare my brain for the anxiety of Liar Game. I'll see you in the next one.